The sun rose over Ouagadougou with a pale glow, filtered by the fine dust rising from the beaten earth streets. The city awoke slowly, with the first street vendors setting up their stalls, children running barefoot through alleys, and motorcycle taxis speeding toward urban chaos. It was just another ordinary day for everyone, except for him. That man with a serene gaze, hidden under a simple cloak, his face discreetly shaded by a straw hat, was no ordinary citizen. That was the president, but no one there knew it. Ibrahim Traoré walked alone, without escorts, without fanfare. He wanted to see with his own eyes what his advisors didn't show him. He wanted to hear what the people said when they didn't know they were being heard. His steps were calm, but his mind was racing. The country was going through a critical phase, with decisions that could change the nation's course. And on that day, he had chosen to step down from the palace, not as a leader, but as a brother to the people. Just ahead, a group of young men was arguing loudly. One of them spoke with anger. "They just make promises, always the same pretty words, and here we are, hungry." Another agreed, kicking a stone in fury. "Where's Traoré now? He talks nicely on TV, but he's never set foot on this filthy ground." Ibrahim listened in silence. Those words didn't wound his ego, but his heart. He wanted to respond, but he knew his mission there was to listen. Further along, he saw an elderly woman struggling to push a cart full of bananas. The cart was stuck in a pothole in the street. Without a second thought, Ibrahim ran over and helped her. She looked at him with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you, son. May Allah bless you." He simply smiled and kept walking, but those simple words touched him more than many speeches in Parliament. As he walked, he noticed a commotion in front of a small school. Two children were fighting over a piece of bread, while a third sat crying on the ground. A young, thin woman, likely the teacher, was trying to calm them. Ibrahim approached, knelt beside the crying child, and offered half the bread he carried in his bag. "Here, little one, don't cry." The child looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. "You're like my father." Those words echoed in his mind. How many children were without fathers? How many widows and orphans had his government still failed to reach? By noon, the sun was scorching, and he sat under a tree near a bustling market. He observed everything in silence. Merchants arguing, a young woman being mistreated by a visibly drunk man, an elderly lady ignored by customers. The city seemed to be breathing sadness, but amidst it all, something surprised him. A boy, about 10 years old with tattered clothes and an alert gaze, offered him a bag of cold water. "It's free, sir. You look tired." Ibrahim was speechless. He took the water, looked into the boy's eyes, and asked, "Why are you giving me this?" The boy answered simply, "Because one day someone gave me some too, when I was thirsty, and it saved my day." The president lowered his head. Never had such a powerful lesson been taught to him with so few words. He decided to follow the boy discreetly. The child walked through alleys, crossed a narrow bridge, and entered a forgotten slum. There, he knelt beside a sick elderly woman, opened a bag, and began giving her what remained of his earnings: 2 loaves of bread, a bottle of water, and a clean cloth. Ibrahim watched, hidden behind a cracked wall. The boy stroked the woman's head and said, "It's going to be okay, Grandma." Traoré felt a lump in his throat. That child, with almost nothing, was giving everything. The president, with so many resources, so many words, so many plans, was he truly giving his all? Was he worthy of the people's hope? At that moment, Ibrahim stood up and decided he could no longer just observe. He walked toward the boy, removed his hat, and asked his name. "I'm Malik," the boy said, wary. Ibrahim smiled. "Thank you, Malik. Today you were my teacher." The boy looked at him with confusion. "Teacher? But I can barely read." Ibrahim just smiled, his eyes welling up. Later, as he returned to the palace, the soldiers barely recognized him. Covered in dust, barefoot, the president looked like he had returned from a spiritual battle. He entered his office in silence, slowly washed his hands, and stared at his reflection in the mirror. The man looking back seemed different, less distant, more human. That night, instead of a political speech, Ibrahim called an emergency meeting with all his ministers. But this time, he didn't bring spreadsheets, charts, or speeches. He brought just one question. How many of you have walked without security through the streets you claim to govern? The silence that followed was deafening. None of them answered. Some looked away. Others pretended to write something. Ibrahim stood up, placed the cloth used by Malik's grandmother on the table, and said with a firm voice, "Until this cloth is clean, this country won't be either." In the days that followed, the people began to notice strange changes. Small schools received new materials. Remote health centers received doctors. Streets once ignored were being paved, but no one knew the exact reason, until an anonymous video began circulating on social media. It was blurry footage, recorded on an old phone. It showed a man helping an elderly woman, sharing bread with a child, and thanking a boy who gave him water. The caption read simply, "The President among us." The reaction was immediate. Many thought it was fake. Others swore they had seen that man at the market or the bus stop. But for everyone, one thing was clear. A leader who walks with his feet on the ground and his heart with the people is worthy of being followed. The days that followed were marked by a heavy silence within the presidential palace. Traoré granted no interviews, made no public appearances, and didn't comment on the viral video now circulating throughout Burkina Faso. In every bar, school, church, and corner, people whispered, "It was him. I'm sure of it. That look. It could only be our Ibrahim." But he remained silent. He didn't need to confirm. The message had already been planted where it mattered most, in the hearts of the people. Meanwhile, in the presidential office, Ibrahim held meetings with leaders who had ignored the cries from the streets for months. In one such meeting, he asked the ministers to present the 5 main complaints from the poorest neighborhoods. One by one, they stammered, consulted papers, cited statistics, but none knew the name of a single resident, the smell of dry earth, or the sound of hungry children crying. "You're governing numbers, not people," Traoré said with cutting calm. But fixing the system from within wasn't enough. He knew he needed to return to the streets, not as a media spectacle, but as a lifelong learner. And so he did. Disguised once again, he returned to the same neighborhood where he met Malik. The boy, upon seeing him, ran toward him with the enthusiasm of a son seeing his father. "You came back, sir!" Ibrahim knelt before him and replied, "I promised I would, and I never break a promise." This time, Ibrahim brought supplies, medicine, and 2 doctors who trusted his silent mission. They treated dozens of people in silence, without cameras, without press. Malik's grandmother, now stronger, wept as she saw the man she considered an angel sent by God, cleaning the mud floor of her home with his own hands. At the end of the afternoon, Ibrahim and Malik sat on the roof of a simple house. The sky was red, and the breeze carried the smell of rice cooking in the alleys. Malik looked at him and said, "Sir, you don't seem like a president." Ibrahim smiled. "And what do you think a president should be?" The boy replied, "Someone who listens, someone who understands." Those words struck like silent thunder in the leader's heart. How many leaders in the world listened only to respond, not to understand? How many hid behind palaces and protocols, forgetting that to govern is to serve? There, in that moment, Traoré rediscovered the meaning of it all. Of his struggle, his uniform, his youth devoted to the cause. But fate would not let that sacred moment pass without opposition. The next day, a group of generals learned that the president was walking the streets without escorts, mingling with the rabble, as one of them put it. The mood in the barracks grew tense. Some saw it as weakness. Others feared that the president's closeness to the people made him uncontrollable in the eyes of darker interests. And so, in a closed room, a new plot to remove him from power began to take shape. Silent, subtle, deadly. One of Traoré's oldest advisors, a quiet man of long-standing trust, who had fought alongside Ibrahim in the days when they slept on the ground and ate with their hands, learned of the conspiracy. He entered the presidential office with heavy eyes. "They're planning something, and it's coming from within." Ibrahim listened in silence. After a few seconds, he replied, "Then it's time for me to go even lower." That night, Ibrahim did something no one expected. Instead of hiding or increasing security, he went to the country's most popular radio program. Sitting before the microphone, he said live, with a steady voice, "I am the same man who walks the streets, who gets dirty with mud, who listens to the cries of every child. If that makes me a target, then I am a target. But let it be clear, I will not abandon my people. The entire nation stopped. In villages without electricity, people turned on battery-powered radios. In hospitals, patients asked for silence to listen. In the barracks, even those plotting fell silent. The country's heart beat with that man. He didn't ask for power. He asked for justice. And when justice is spoken with tears of truth, it disarms even the cruelest. The next day, the streets were filled with a silent crowd. Men and women held handmade signs with phrases like, "Our president walks with us," and "Don't touch Traoré." There were no armored cars, no shots, just voices. And those voices shouted louder than tanks. The generals backed down. They knew you cannot defeat a man protected by millions of hearts. They knew he had become more than a president. He had become a symbol, and symbols don't bleed like men. They resurrect, even when others try to kill them. That same day, Traoré returned to Malik's neighborhood. But this time, he didn't go in secret. He was welcomed with drums, dances, and tears. Malik's grandmother gave him a simple necklace made of seeds and fabric. This is a gift from the humble, so you never forget where your strength comes from. He put the necklace around his neck in front of everyone, as if being crowned not by kings, but by the invisible of history. Before leaving, he looked into Malik's eyes and said, "The greatest lesson of my life came from you." The boy hugged him tightly, tears streaming down his face. "You're my hero, sir." Ibrahim smiled. "No, today the hero is you." And then, with firm steps, he returned to the palace. But now, nothing was the same. He knew the true revolution wasn't made with weapons, but with gestures. That the true victory wasn't over political enemies, but over indifference. And that to truly govern, one must walk with dirty feet and a clean heart. Atop a hill, the sun began to set again. But something had changed in the land. It wasn't just hope being reborn. It was the certainty that, as long as there are leaders who listen with their hearts and act with humility, justice will not be just a dream. It will be the ground where the feet of the righteous walk. Months later, a simple sign was erected at the entrance to the neighborhood where it all began. It read, "Here, a boy taught the president the value of a gesture." Malik was now studying at a school built there, named in honor of his grandmother. And Ibrahim Traoré, every time he passed by that place, stopped in silence, touched the necklace he wore around his neck and remembered. The true transformations are not born in palaces, but in the streets, where the invisible plant seeds of justice and the courageous reap redemption.